Thanks for joining me today. I've got a guest who's going to talk about exercise. Quite often, the answer is just to go harder on the exercise. And today, we're going to hear from Erin, and she lives in a little coastal town just outside of Melbourne in Australia. And she's going to talk about her experience with massively ramping up her exercise and where she went from to where she is today in just a short period of time. So I'm really excited to welcome you, Erin, to chat with me today on this episode.
Hi, Clint. It is amazing to be here. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Well, we've had great fun chatting online because I've seen your progress recently inside Rheumatoid Support, where you've been a member for a while, so we can communicate and I can get your updates all the time and exchange ideas and so forth. And when you said, "Hey, I've started exercising more and I'm seeing massive results," I thought this is the message that I want to get across. And so, tell us where were you at before you started ramping up the exercise?
Well, I was eating absolute baseline. Like I could not add in any food, so I was eating baseline for months and months. And I was losing weight constantly. It was a steady decline. It was only slow, but every week I was losing more weight, and I got down to 51.8 kilos, which is absolutely nothing for someone who's my height. And that was very scary, actually. People all around were worried about me, and actually I'd started to get pretty worried about my weight and how low I'd gotten as well. And every time I tried to introduce any kind of food to help bring my weight back up, I just woke up the next day with more inflammation, more pain, and it was a real struggle. I just could not introduce anything. So buckwheat quinoa every day, sweet potato every day, lots and lots of spinach and leafy greens, and that was it for months. So it was really challenging.
I see. And then I remember us having this particular moment in our discussion. I suggested, well, look, what I see with other people is when you increase exercise tremendously, it tends to make you less sensitive to the food reintroductions. And you took that to heart and you decided to go for it.
Yeah, so I started Bikram at one studio, but they only offered 2 classes a week, and that was 90 minutes. But then they actually dropped them down to 60-minute classes, which I just felt weren't the same. And I was getting like some small amount of progress, and I'd also bought an exercise bike for home, and I was using that. But again, I was not really seeing any benefits from it. Slight benefits. I could feel that maybe I was getting a bit better at the Bikram poses as I was going, but otherwise not great. I wouldn't say great results from that. But at around about the same time, one of the teachers at the Bikram studio told me that an old teacher was opening up a new studio, and it was a dedicated Bikram studio, 90 minutes only, 2 classes a day. And I was so excited. I couldn't wait for that day. And I kept saying to my husband, when she opens that studio, I'm going to go every day for at least 7 days, and I'm just going to do my own kind of Bikram retreat. I'm just going to smash it. And he was all on board for that, which is amazing. And so when she opened up her studio in December, it was the best day. And I went to the studio and had my first class, and I could notice difference. From halfway through the first class, I could tell that things were going to be different, and it was awesome.
To anyone who's absolutely brand new to this podcast and has not heard me talk about Bikram Yoga many times in the past, could you just spend just 1 or 2 minutes explaining what it is? What are we talking about here?
Okay, well, it's a series of, I think, 26 postures, yoga postures, and they're pretty intense, and it's done in a hot room, a very hot room. They say 40 degrees Celsius and 40% humidity, so it's hot. And you just work through the postures. Each posture builds on the next, and by the end of it, you've pretty much worked every muscle and every joint in your body. And and the teachers at my Bikram studio always say it's the only exercise in the world where you come out of it with more energy than you went in. So yeah, that's a little bit of like a little bit 101 of Bikram, but yeah.
It has copped a lot of bad press over the last couple
Totally.
of years, not just since the Netflix film has come out, which has really become mainstream, anti-Bikram sort of sentiment.
Yeah.
But prior to that, because there were certain allegations about its creator, the sequences, the sequences brander of the posture series, with lots of bad press. How has your studio handled that situation? And have you felt that the studio has struggled accordingly? And do you feel any conflict personally with what you may sort of have been made aware of about the creator and the sequence itself?
So there was a level of uncomfortableness for me when I first started, but I chatted with the studio owner, and she calls her studio Bikram in little writing, original hot yoga Geelong in big writing, and we talked about it, and she said that she's not affiliated with him at all, and so no money from the studio goes to the man himself, and that made me feel comfortable. It's really unfortunate that he's not a good person, because Bikram is like the actual series that you do. It's amazing. I've said it in my journal on the support program. It's life changing. It's incredible, and it's absolutely for everybody. My studio owner was telling me a story about a woman in America who has Parkinson's disease. She's in her late 70s, could hardly move, and was starting to do her Bikram postures on the bed lying down. And recently, after a few months of working really hard with a Bikram teacher one-on-one, she's now standing up and starting to do the postures like as they're intended to be. And it's just really exciting to hear that kind of change in people's life. And it really is like a miraculous kind of thing. I can't glow about it more than I can.
I know. Look,
I just get so excited about it.
I know, and I share your same level of just feeling of misfortune and disappointment about this conflict, because look, it saved me from having a knee replacement possibly for 10 years. It got me out of a crippled state into a fairly functioning state. And the stories are endless with this sequence as to how it can transform and reduce inflammation and improve your range of motion of your joints and just make you feel back to normal as best as we can.
Yeah.
So let's hear about your transformation here. I know, you're excited to share this. So how will you do the sort of, well, first of all, tell us how often you went, what results you saw. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I said, halfway through the first class, I started to notice some changes. I was lying in Savasana halfway through and could feel the stiffness and pain in my wrist just start to melt away. Now, this studio that I go to does have infrared heating panels, which are absolutely incredible. And I think partly that's why it's been so good, because of the infrared heating panels. But literally, it started to dissipate halfway through the first class. I couldn't believe it. And I actually started crying a little bit on the mat and pulled myself together and finished the class. and then afterwards, I was talking to the teacher on the day, and I explained to her that this happened, and she just wanted to give me a hug. She was so excited. I started crying again when I was talking with her. And I'm not a hugger as well, by the way, but I was hugging everybody that day. It was amazing. And then, the studio owner came out because she'd been practicing in that class, and the teacher told the studio owner, and she was giving me a hug, and everybody was so excited. And I just couldn't believe, I was just so grateful that she had opened the studio and that I had an opportunity to to change my life by going. And it was that was just the first class. So I went again. I think I did 6 classes in a row. I don't think I made 7, unfortunately, but I did 6 classes in a row. About 3 to 4 classes in, I started to notice that I was looking stronger. Like, there's mirrors everywhere, of course. And I was looking at myself and I was looking at my stomach and I was thinking, geez, I think I'm getting stronger. And then about the 6th class, I think, I looked at my legs and I thought, hang on a minute, I've got like muscles in my legs. Because, I explained before, I'd lost so much weight, I'd lost so much muscle tone. I just was a walking skeleton. So to see some like muscle bulk coming back on was so incredible. But that could only happen because after my first class, I went home and I felt like I needed to eat something. I didn't know what it was. I was thinking, it's not buckwheat, it's not quinoa, and it certainly isn't sweet potato. So maybe I can just try a couple of walnuts. And I did. And I woke up the next day with no
problem,
ramifications whatsoever, like no change. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. The next night I came home after Bikram and my husband said, why don't you try tofu? I was like, oh, I'm really scared of tofu. And he was like, nah, do it. I had tofu that night and it was the same. Woke up with no problems the next day. And I thought, this is amazing. So since that day, I've pretty much had tofu every day, often twice a day. And I've also just slowly increased my the variety of my diet so much. And that's been what has enabled me to then build the muscle in Bikram. And it's just been like brilliant to see. So I probably put on about 4 kilos in about a bit over a month, just by going nearly every day.
That's 9 pounds to our US folks.
Yeah. I'm still not perfect. I definitely do still have some pain in my wrists in particular, but in comparison to what I was like before I started Bikram, I'm polar opposite. Yeah, I feel, oh my gosh, I've just got way more energy. I generally am sleeping better, although unfortunately not last night. But unfortunately, kids don't really let you, they don't help sometimes. But there's just so much positive to talk about as a result of going to Bikram. And I counted, I've done 39 classes in 79 days.
Okay.
So not quite every day. Obviously, life gets in the way, and I've been back to work. I went back to work after about 18 months off on parental leave, and my husband also went away for a few weeks to London for work. So that makes it difficult to get to classes. But I'm pretty proud of nearly doing once every 2 days.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
And it's really obvious the change.
It's a huge commitment of time. People sometimes throw up some reasons or justifications as to why they don't do it. We've already addressed one, which is the kind of like, just putting the foot down and saying, no, I don't want to support that sort of organization. Yeah. That's one. And I've had close friends challenge me on that. And I've explained earlier that, I just separate the sequence from the person in my mind and, and that's how I deal with that. So that's one objection. Other objections people make are they think I'm going to lose weight. Now, you've just pointed out that you gained weight, and I want to add something that was really, really surprising to me is that when you go to the gym, the advice is always, look, don't work the same muscles every day because they need a few days to recover. Otherwise, the micro tears can't repair themselves in a bigger fashion. So what I was always afraid of in Bikram classes was if I went every day, I'm overworking the muscle, it can't grow. But I found, just as Bikram says, it is a daily practice. And sure enough, I, like you, noticed that my legs were getting stronger. And in the awkward postures, which are towards the start, I noticed that I could, you can just tell you're holding them a little longer, you're shaking a little less.
A little less.
The weak side, the weak leg in my case, is doing a little bit more of the work.
Yeah.
And and at times in the past, I was front row and smashing it, in good, strong, holding deep and stuff. So, and that's when you go the most. The people who go the
Mm.
most are the ones that are the strongest, and it's not
Yep.
like the gym at all, is it?
No, no, you don't get that kind of lactic acid buildup that you get from a
Mm,
big workout at the gym, and you don't get that next day recovery feeling, that sore muscle feeling. You just, I don't know, maybe it's the heat or something, but you just don't get that. And so it's possible to go again the next day. Sometimes I go 6:30 in the evening, and then I'm back again at 6 o'clock in the morning to do the class the next day because it's the only one I can get to. And it's, I mean, there's not even 12 hours between that, and it's totally fine,
yeah,
to
yeah.
do it again.
I
Yeah.
think part of it is that you're only doing the muscle groups twice. Like let's say with the
Mm,
orchid, you're holding quadriceps, and then you're on to the next thing. And yes, the quads get used multiple times in other postures, of course, as part of combinations. But
yeah.
you're not basically trying to completely exhaust a muscle to the point of failure every day. You're
Yes.
working within your own.
And you
Yeah,
only go so far as you need to go.
yeah.
You're not killing yourself trying to reach a point in a posture. You just go as far as you can go, and that's
Mhm.
all you do today. Like if it's less than yesterday, that's okay. If it's more than yesterday, that's awesome. But you don't fight against your body
Yeah.
to make it do something over and over again, and you just kind of roll with it. And
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, it's a lot easier than, I think, for me, going to the gym. I hate going to the
Right.
gym.
Another objection that people throw up is that,
Yeah,
oh, it's going to hurt my wrists. And the reason they say that is because a lot of people have been and done downward dogs at other yoga
yeah,
studios and stuff. Tell
yeah.
us about, if you got bad wrists, how do you go?
Well, I don't do other yoga because I can't do like vinyasa flow. I can't do the downward dogs and things. But I I think that Bikram works the wrists in mild ways. Like for example, in pranayama breathing, which is at the start where you do, and um, you're slowly just working through the wrists. You're not really hurting them or pushing
Mm.
them or putting pressure on them or anything. So you're kind of just giving them some flexibility. And there's one pose. I think it's locust, half locust pose, where you put your arms underneath you and you're
Mhm.
lying on your stomach. At the start, there was no way I could do that. It was absolutely impossible to put my arms underneath my wrist. Sometimes I couldn't even um, have my palms turned down onto the mat. Like I had to lie with my palms facing up, and that's how I did the posture for the first little while. Now, like I can get them right onto my body.
Yeah.
And even when I've got, increased pain in my wrists for whatever reason, I still do it. I still do that
Yep.
posture because afterwards, when the blood flows back into the wrist, it feels amazing. And I know that it's beneficial for my wrists to do that. Um, but again, it's like I said before, you only go so far as you can
Mm.
go. So if your wrists are hurting, don't do the things that are hurting them. Just take it easy on the postures that involve your wrists if you
Yep.
need to.
Yep. And
And it's the same with, yeah,
it's
same with
very
anything.
wrist friendly, isn't it? The whole
Oh
sequence.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
You've just described the only 2 points I can think of where risks become involved. The first breathing exercise, you're not even loading them, as you say. They're just
mm,
moving. They're just moving
yeah,
unloaded. And then another
yeah,
one, you're not applying the weight directly into the wrist. If it's highly inflamed, it just knows that it has body weight around it, sort of thing.
mm, mm,
And I can understand where you've slowly progressed to where you're at now and avoiding earlier on. I've done all of these things, all different body parts. I've always needed corrections and stuff, but I just wanted to make sure people understand. Don't be afraid if you've hurt your wrists in the past of this sequence. This sequence is wrist friendly. It's blissful for the wrists.
absolutely. It is. It's
Um,
really good, and it's so helpful.
oh
So
yeah,
helpful to the wrist.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
what were the hardest parts for you going through this?
Well, that one, that posture that I just described was one of the hardest things. Like I said, totally impossible. Um, But when I first started, like I said, I had no muscle tone whatsoever, particularly in my legs. So I didn't have very strong legs, and I had no muscles to support my knees when I was standing, doing a standing series. So there was one or two classes that I literally had to kneel to do pranayama breathing at the start because I couldn't even stand at that point. So there was some challenges around that, but I think the standing series was the hardest for me to kind of build up to because of that problem, because I couldn't balance on one leg. It wasn't just my knees, because my knees have actually been pretty good with my arthritis. They're not usually affected, but my ankles and my feet are. So that was another problem with the standing series as well. I was constantly, my feet got very, very sore trying to stand on one foot.
Oh, and it's so annoying when you've got pain in your ankle when you're trying to balance on one leg, because you become self-competitive and self-comparative to previous classes, and you think, oh, I feel strong in this leg. I'm going to be able to do really well in this posture today as I stand on this one leg. And then you put the weight on and you're like, damn, that ankle hurts. I can't balance today because that stupid ankle. Yeah. So I remember that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always sort of feel with pranayama breathing at the start and half moon pose at the start, they are kind of a litmus test for how my joints are feeling just generally. Because, so, when you're going about your day and things are, you just, especially when you're at work or you've got your kids or, you're really busy, you tend to just carry on and you don't always stop to think what's actually sore today. You just make adjustments and keep going. But when I first get into Bikram and I start doing the breathing at the start and then that first pose, I can really tell, I can feel, oh, my shoulders are sore today. Oh, I've got trouble with my wrists. Oh, my elbows, and it's a kind of like a good reminder of how I'm feeling. And I can sort of assess whether it's better or worse than it was yesterday or the day before or the day before that. And I find that really helpful. But half moon pose is another one that I just can't get right. I don't know what it is about it, but it's not my favorite.
Look, I don't enjoy one posture in the whole thing. It's all challenging, right? But it's all beneficial. The whole kind of you get back what you put in. Sort of any one of those cliches you could apply to this perfectly. It's super hard. Let me take that back. It challenges you in all the right ways, regardless of your physical ability.
Yeah,
and then you get out of it a lot. So, can you tell me what's improved the most since you've adopted
what's improved the most? Life in general. Life has changed so much since that day that I first went to Bikram and my wrist started to improve. I often have days where I just don't even think about the fact that I have rheumatoid arthritis anymore. I'm eating so much more variety of food. I'm eating the same things as my children eat, which is amazing because now I don't have to do 2 meals for every meal anymore. I've gone back to work and I feel that Bikram's totally enabled that because my energy levels are up so much. Like I said before, I'm sleeping a bit better. I just feel so much better in myself as well. Like, not necessarily related to arthritis, but my RA is definitely better than it was and so much more under control, which is fantastic. But if you're talking about within Bikram, well, my back bends have always been pretty good. So my bow and camel, they've improved the most, and and they're ones that I really enjoy doing, which is good. And actually, believe it or not, I love the heat, and I really, really enjoy being in the Bikram studio. So I know you always say that you got results from it, that you hated it. I love it. I actually love it. I'm one of those weird people out there that loves it. I don't know. But I really enjoy most of the poses. I really enjoy seeing the progress that you make. Like last night, I did a great standing bow And I was like, wow, I didn't actually fall out of it for the first time. I thought, yeah, I nailed that. Unfortunately, then I had to lie down for the rest of the
Yeah.
standing series. I was so tired, but so it wasn't my best class, but I did a great bow. I was
Well,
very pleased.
well, that's right. You know, that is so common. I can relate to that. If you push yourself a little bit too much in one posture, you then suffer. It's a good
Yes,
message for those people who are still listening to this, who are thinking to myself, I don't know anything about this, but I may check this out. You can
yeah,
sit down, lie down at any time in this class. The only thing they don't like is if you get up and walk out, because it just really
yeah,
disrupts the energy and it just sets the wrong kind of precedent for the rest of the class, because everyone's struggling. And so you want to all stick with it together. So the only
mhm,
thing, is they want you to stay and continue and complete it, which just means that just take it easy first class. Just sit down. I've heard all sorts of stories, like people coming in wheelchairs, all
mhm.
sorts of stuff. The hardest part is showing up. If you can
Oh,
get into that
definitely.
class, you can do it. There's nothing that can't be attempted at some infinitesimally small level that can be built upon each day. So,
Yeah,
well done. Really good to talk to you about this. It's been really great to hear how much it's improved, not just your body, but your life. And that's it, isn't it?
yeah,
When we have a
yeah,
disease that's just so frustratingly difficult to shift, that's persistent, that's so deeply aggravating to us and annoying and affects our mind and our thoughts all the time, when we have a tool or a daily habit like this that we can use to interrupt that and to turn this into a positive lifestyle change, it's
yeah.
uplifting. And you can see it in your face and your eyes. I mean, you found your solution and you're
Yeah,
rolling it out.
absolutely, I have. One other thing that I wanted to mention is an improvement that I've seen is actually my appreciation for my body, and for what it can do. Prior to starting Bikram, I've got to be honest, I pretty well hated my body. I was like, all it does is give me pain and suffering. Yeah, it might get me through the day, sort of, but I can't pick up my son. I can't do anything else. And so I didn't love it. I hated. I really hated it. I was like, this is the shittest body. Excuse my language. Sorry.
Hmm.
Um, but starting to go to Bikram and being able to do certain things, like even right at the start, you know, I was able to do some poses really well, and I was like, wow, I can do these. And then as I got better and as I started to build muscle, I started to realize like how amazing my body is. And then when, you know, with noticing the changes with my arthritis as well, and with the ability to introduce more foods, thought my body's actually pretty incredible. It's healing itself. It is actually doing what it's supposed to do. And so my appreciation for my body has just changed so much. And I just wanted to add that in as well, that's been like a really big thing for me, that suddenly I feel positive about the body that I'm living in instead of
Mm,
negative. And that's
mm.
really good.
When we send our body signals of negativity and hatred, that's a body that, withers and cripples. So, how wonderful that is as well.
Yeah.
The profound impact of this intervention, this getting up and going and doing the daily exercise. And I wanted us to talk about, to wrap it up. It doesn't have to be the Bikram yoga sequence.
Mm.
Now, it's my preference for people. I think it's the sort of highest level of results that you're going to get if you do that daily, as you've
Mm.
seen.
Mm-hmm.
But if people don't have access to Bikram Yoga Studio,
Yeah.
I think that doing it at home, listening to an audio recording or watching a class, there's a free version on YouTube that you can watch the whole sequence. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also the iTunes version. I think it's $20 or something to buy. Bikram speaking it out loud, and you can follow along at home. But it's good to see the postures, because you can't. If you're a beginner, you really need to see how to do it. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, so that's one option, is to do it yourself at home.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be heated. The heat, just standing on the carpet and following along, is All he needs an internet connection or an iTunes or a
Yep.
download up there. And then other than that, any kind of exercise that doesn't irritate the joints is a positive exercise. Go to the gym, get on your push bike, get on an elliptical bike, go for a really fast walk, ideally up a hill in summer, to get a sweat on. Do a little bit more than you feel that you want to, because if it doesn't hurt the joints, then everything is benefit from that. And so whilst we've spent this time chatting about Bikram Yoga, we can achieve wonderful outcomes as well just by applying ourselves daily to an exercise routine that gives us this increase in heart rate, hopefully a little bit of sweat, and also builds muscle. This is all wonderful.
Yeah. For me, having a class to go to really helps, because if I was at home trying to do exercise with my children around, it's hard to get the time. So having a class helps. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Bikram class, but going to, say, a pump class or something like that would be, I think, a good thing too. Sometimes team sports as well are really good because you commit to a team. And so it's a lot harder to say, I just don't feel like going today, because it's not just you, it's you're letting down the whole team if you don't go. So I've always found over the years that team sports and things are really good in that respect, if you can do them. I mean, I used to play netball all the time. I can't play netball right now, but if you can do something that's team related, or at least with a group, like a running group or something, that's really good, because then there's like impetus to go, I think.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I know that sort of social expectation. You've got that accountability of showing up.
Yeah.
So yeah, another great idea. Well, thank you. I wanted to get you on and have you tell this experience that you've had, and it's been even better than I thought, because of all the extra things, not just improvements to the arthritis. I mean, that's why we go. But it's the life improvements, the self-appreciation, the body love, the improved happiness. It's everything, isn't it? So well done, Erin. Thank you so much
Thank you
for coming on and sharing this.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.